Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting to the heart of modern energy, how we actually generate and move electricity.
We're looking at induced currents, pulling insights directly from, well, one of the most foundational physics texts out there.
Right, from Feynman's Lectures, Vol.2. Our goal here is to, unpack the big ideas, the conceptual leaps, and even the tech that came from Faraday's discoveries, but in a way you can follow without staring at the equations.
Exactly. And this chapter, it marks a huge turning point. The 1820s showed electricity could make magnetism that was Ørsted. But the big question remained.
Could magnetism make electricity? Complete the circle.
Precisely. And Michael Faraday found the answer was yes, but with a really crucial condition. It's not just having a magnetic field.
Needs to be changing. Right, that's the key.
That's the absolute key, a changing magnetic field. It doesn't matter if you move the magnet, move the wire, or just vary the field strength. That change is what induces a current.
And that single idea underpins, well, pretty much all electric motors and generators.
Which is kind of amazing when you think about it. The same basic machine can often do both jobs.
Let's visualize that basic machine then. What are the components?
Okay, picture this. You've got a permanent magnet, maybe a horseshoe shape, creating a steady magnetic field, North Pole, South Pole.
Got it.
And then sitting in that field is a coil of wire wrapped around an axis so it can spin. That's the armature. Often it's wound on soft iron slots to really concentrate the magnetic field through the coil.
Okay, so for a motor, we push electricity into that coil.
Yep. Current flows through the wire loops in the magnetic field. The field exerts forces on those moving charges, creating a torque, a twist that makes the armature spin. Input electricity, output motion. Simple enough.
But then there's the flip side, the generator.
And this is the really cool part, the reciprocity. Take that exact same machine, but instead of feeding it electricity, you physically turn the shaft. You make the coil spin mechanically.
Electricity comes out.
Electricity comes out. It starts generating a current in the coil. That's the generator function.
So the spinning itself is the change that Faraday was talking about.
Exactly. As the coil rotates, the amount of magnetic field lines passing through the area of the loop, what we call the magnetic flux, is constantly changing. More field lines go through, then fewer, then they go through the other way. That change is the induction.
It's not about the field just being there, but about the flow of the field through the loop changing over time.
You got it. And this wasn't just theoretical. Think about Bell's original telephone design.
Ah, right. The sound waves vibrated a diaphragm,
which moved a little coil of wire near a magnet. That tiny movement changed the flux through the coil, inducing a small alternating current that matched the pattern of the sound waves. Mechanical vibration turned directly into an electrical signal. Clever stuff.
That brings up another really fundamental point. You mentioned the relative motion idea.
Oh, absolutely crucial. It doesn't matter from the perspective of physics whether the wire moves past the magnet or the magnet moves past the wire.
The induced current is the same in both cases.
Identical. If you push a wire through a stationary magnetic field, electrons feel a force, current flows. If you keep the wire still and sweep the magnet past it, the electrons also feel a force, and the same current flows.
So induction really only cares about the motion between the conductor and the field.
Exactly. The relative motion is all that counts for the effect itself.
Okay, so something is pushing those electrons around the circuit when induction happens. What do we call that push?
We call it the electromotive force, or EMF. Now, the name is a bit old-fashioned. It's not really a force in the Newtonian sense. It's better to think of it as an induced voltage.
Like electrical pressure.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's the total push per unit charge that drives the current around the entire loop, generated by that changing magnetic field.
And there's a rule for how much EMF you get, right? The flux rule.
There is. And conceptually, it's quite straightforward. The size of the induced EMF, the voltage you get, is directly proportional to how fast the magnetic flux through the loop is changing.
So faster change means more voltage.
Exactly. Spin the generator faster, the flux changes more rapidly per second, you get a higher EMF. Move the magnet faster, same result. It's the rate of change that matters.
Which explains how generators produce alternating current, AC.
Precisely. As that coil spins continuously in the magnetic field, the flux through it increases and decreases smoothly, sinusoidally, like a wave.
And the rate of change is also going up and down.
Right. When the coil is positioned so the flux is changing most rapidly, the EMF hits its peak value. Then, as it rotates further, the rate of change slows down, becomes zero for an instant, then reverses direction.
And the EMF reverses direction too. pushing the current first one way, then the other.
Exactly that. That continuous back and forth is AC power, generated directly by the continuous changing flux from rotation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's connect this to a really practical device,
Yeah.
the transformer. These are everywhere in the power grid.
Absolutely indispensable. Transformers work based on what's called mutual induction. It's induction happening between two separate circuits.
So how are they set up?
Well, you typically have two coils of wire insulated from each other, a primary coil and a secondary coil, and they're usually wound around a common core made of soft iron.
What's the iron core for?
It's there to guide and concentrate the magnetic field. It ensures that almost all the magnetic field created by the primary coil also passes through the secondary coil. Makes it efficient.
Okay, so you feed AC into the primary coil.
Right. Because it's AC, the current is constantly changing. This changing current creates a magnetic field in the iron core that's also constantly changing, growing, shrinking, reversing.
And that changing magnetic field goes through the secondary coil.
And induces an EMF in the secondary coil because the flux through it is changing. So you get an AC voltage appearing across the secondary coil, even though it's not physically connected to the primary.
Magic. Well, physics.
Yeah.
And you can change the voltage level.
That's the key application. If the secondary coil has more turns of wire than the primary, the voltage gets stepped up. If it has fewer turns, it gets stepped down.
Which is how we send power long distances at high voltage and then reduce it for homes.
Exactly. But notice it has to be AC. If you put steady direct current, DC, into the primary,
The magnetic field would be constant. No change, no induction in the secondary.
right, precisely. No changing flux, no induced EMF in the other coil. But this leads us to think about what happens within a single coil when the current changes.
This is self-inductance, like electrical inertia.
You got it. When the current flowing through a coil changes, that changing current creates a changing magnetic field of its own. That changing field induces an EMF back in the very same coil,
A back EMF.
a back EMF, and this self-induced EMF always acts to oppose the change in current that's causing it. It's like the coil resists having its current change.
And that resistance, that opposition, is described by Lenz's rule.
Yes, Lenz's rule is the fundamental principle governing the direction of all induced effects. It states that the induced EMF and the current it would drive is always in a direction that opposes the change in magnetic flux that produced it.
Nature trying to maintain the status quo, magnetically speaking.
That's a perfect way to think about it. If you try to increase the current, and thus the flux, in a coil, the back EMF pushes against your voltage source, trying to slow the increase.
And if you try to decrease the current,
The back EMF acts in the same direction as the original current, trying to prop it up to keep it flowing, resisting the decrease.
the text gives this great example with a lamp and a big coil, an inductor.
Yeah, the kick demonstration. You have a battery, a switch, a lamp, and a large inductor all in series. Current flows, lamp is lit. Now you suddenly open the switch, trying to instantly cut off the current.
But the inductor fights back.
Violently, sometimes. It generates a huge back EMF trying to keep that current going. This voltage can be much, much higher than the original battery voltage.
High enough to make the lamp flash brightly even after the switch is open? Or jump across the switch contacts as a spark?
Exactly. It's a visible demonstration of that electrical inertia, the opposition to change dictated by Lenz's rule.
And Lenz's rule also explains the forces involved, like that repulsion gadget experiment.
Oh yeah, the jumping ring. Classic demo. You place a solid aluminum ring over the core of an electromagnet. Then you hit the electromagnet with AC power.
So the magnetic field is rapidly changing, going up and down.
Right. This induces a strong current circulating within the aluminum ring. Now, Lenz's rule says this induced current must create its own magnetic field that opposes the change from the electromagnet.
So if the electromagnet's field is compressing upwards, the ring's field pushes downwards.
Precisely. It creates an opposing magnetic pole. North repels north, south repels south. The net effect is a strong repulsive force that literally shoots the ring up into the air. That's Lenz's rule made physical.
And this kind of induced current doesn't just happen in neat rings or coils, does it? It can happen in solid pieces of metal, too.
Right. When you have a chunk of conductive material like a metal plate or disc moving through a changing magnetic field or in a changing field, currents get induced that swirl around inside the material itself. We call these eddy currents.
Like little whirlpools of current.
Exactly. And these eddy currents, again following Lenz's rule, create magnetic fields that oppose the change causing them. This often manifests as a drag force.
Like the copper pendulum example.
Perfect example. You swing a solid copper plate so it passes between the poles of a strong magnet. As soon as the plate enters the field region, strong eddy currents are induced,
And they create opposing fields.
which interact with the main magnet's field to create a force that strongly opposes the plate's motion. The pendulum just stops dead or slows down incredibly fast. It's called magnetic damping.
Which is usually unwanted in motors and generators, right? It wastes energy as heat.
It absolutely does. Eddy currents flowing through the resistance of the metal generate heat, representing energy loss. So engineers need to minimize them.
How do they do that?
The standard trick is to break up the paths for these large swirling currents. Instead of using solid chunks of iron for cores or solid copper for rotors, they use thin insulated sheets called laminations, or they cut slots into the conductive part.
Like slicing the copper plate in the pendulum experiment.
Exactly. If you cut slots in the copper plate, it can still swing through the magnet, but the long paths needed for strong eddy currents are interrupted. The damping effect becomes much, much weaker. This is crucial for efficiency in electrical machines.
Okay. And sometimes engineers actually use these induced forces, like in an induction motor.
Yes, the induction motor is a very clever application. Instead of feeding current directly to the rotating part, the rotor, you create a magnetic field in the stationary part, the stator, that actually rotates.
A rotating magnetic field. How?
Usually with multiple sets of coils fed by carefully timed AC, like three-phase power. The combined effect is a magnetic field that spins around the inside of the motor casing.
Okay.
Now, this rotating field sweeps past the conductors in the rotor, often just a cage or a ring of copper or aluminum. This induces eddy currents in the rotor,
And by Lenz's rule, these currents create a field opposing the change.
which means they get dragged along by the rotating stator field. The interaction between the rotating field and the field produced by the induced currents creates a continuous torque on the rotor, making it spin. No brushes, no direct electrical contact to the rotor needed. It's elegant.
It really is. And all of this, from generators to motors to transformers, stems from that one core discovery by Faraday. Makes you think about that story.
When he was asked about the practical use of his discovery.
Yeah. What is the use of a newborn baby? It highlights how fundamental physics becomes world-changing technology through engineering.
Absolutely. The principles are simple, but scaling them up to power plants like Boulder Dam or designing efficient long-distance transmission lines, that's where engineering comes in. It's about dealing with the practicalities.
Like choosing the best materials, iron to guide the fields, copper for low resistance, and shaping everything just right to minimize losses and maximize output.
It involves optimizing geometry, managing heat, ensuring mechanical stability, all based on applying Faraday's law and Lenz's rule effectively.
And the text makes a point that this isn't some solved field. People are still working on making these machines better.
Definitely. It's not a dead subject at all. Finding new magnetic materials, using advanced semiconductor controls for motors, optimizing transformer efficiency, there's constant refinement. The principles are old, but the engineering application is always evolving.
So wrapping this up, what are the absolute must-remember takeaways from this deep dive into induced currents?
I'd say three things stand out. First, the fundamental trigger. Induced currents only happen when the magnetic flux through a circuit is changing. Static fields don't cut it.
Second, the consequence. This changing flux creates an electrical pressure, the EMF or induced voltage, and its size depends directly on how fast the flux is changing, the flux rule.
And third, the governing principle, Lenz's rule. Nature resists change. The induced effects always act to oppose the change in flux that created them. This opposition is the source of the forces and the back EMF.
It's kind of profound, isn't it? That the very forces we harness to light our cities and run our industries are basically a consequence of nature's inherent inertia, its tendency to push back against change.
It really is. It connects fundamental physics to the massive electrical infrastructure we rely on every single day. It's elegance and utility combined.
A fantastic journey through a core piece of physics. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into induced currents and the legacy of Faraday's discovery.
My pleasure. See you next time.